family's old house was demolished, and we received a compensation of 60 million. My mom gave all the money to my 3 older sisters and didn't leave a single penny for me. But the very next day after splitting the money, she called me out of the blue. "Son, Mom's not feeling well. I'd like to come stay with you for a few days. Is that okay?" I sneered inwardly. So after splitting the money, she remembers she needs someone to take care of her in her old age. Before she could finish, I interrupted her. "Mom, I've already contacted that high-end nursing home for you. It's $20,000 a month. Great environment. Since Amanda, Bella, and Chloe got the money, they should cover the expenses. It's only right. I'll have them take you there right away." There was instant, deathly silence on the other end of the line. All these years, I've been like a fool. I'm the only son in the family, and in their eyes, the most successful one. I graduated from a top university, built a career in a big city, own a house and a car, and make $1 million a year. In their eyes, all of this is taken for granted. When Amanda needed $200,000 to buy a house, I gave it. When Bella's child needed $50,000 in sponsorship fees to get into a key high school, I paid it. When Chloe's store lost $300,000, I covered the loss. My mom would call every few days, either saying something was wrong here or she needed money there. Every time, without hesitation, I transferred the money. I thought I was the pillar of this family, that my contributions were seen by all, and that my mom's heart ached most for her only son. Until yesterday, that 60 million in demolition money hit me like 60 million loud slaps to the face. So, in their eyes, I was just an ATM they could draw from endlessly. I could hear his rapid, suppressed breathing. He probably never dreamed that his son, who had always been so obedient to him, would say something like that. I quietly waited for his thunderous rage or his moral blackmail. But nothing came. A few seconds later, the phone was slammed down abruptly. The dial tone buzzed in my ear. I picked up my phone and glanced at the call log. Then I pulled that number, which I knew by heart, into my block list. After hanging up, I felt an unprecedented sense of relief, as if a boulder that had been pressing on my heart for years had finally been moved away. The door to my study was pushed open gently. My wife, Fiona, walked in carrying a cup of hot tea. "Who were you talking to? You sounded a bit upset." I took her hand and told her everything about yesterday's money split and the phone call just now. After listening, she wasn't angry or surprised. She just let out a long sigh. "I knew this day would come eventually. Good. Let it be a clean break. Whatever decision you make, I support you." My heart warmed. With a wife like this, what more could I ask for? But the peace didn't last long. My phone soon rang again. "Have you lost your mind? How could you talk to Mom like that? Putting her in a nursing home? How could you even think of that? Isn't she not feeling well?" "Nursing homes have professional care. That's perfect for her. She's your mother. Supporting her in her old age is your responsibility as a son. When the 60 million demolition money was being split, why didn't you say that was a son's responsibility? Mom gave all the money to you, so you should take on that responsibility. There's no such thing as taking the money and not doing your duty. I'm telling you, starting yesterday, I'm done." I hung up. Less than 5 minutes later, another unfamiliar number called. It was Bella. "It's not easy for her, is it? So she can take her 5 million and console herself." "I have no problem with that. She pities you all. What about me? I don't care about the money. I care about the heart. A heart that was deceived and left in a nest of betrayal. Bella, drop that attitude of yours. It won't work on me. You'll break Mom's heart." The moment she decided to give me nothing, my heart was already broken. I hung up again. Next came Chloe, the most impatient one. The second the call connected, she started cursing. "Ryan, you ungrateful wolf. You heartless thing. Mom wasted her life raising you. All those years of education went to the dogs. If you don't take Mom in, we'll come to your company and make a scene." Listening to her tirade, I felt nothing inside. Not even a ripple. It was almost laughable. These were my own sisters. When they took my money, it was all, "Dear little brother." Now, to make me keep being their workhorse, they even resorted to threats. I knew it wasn't over. If phone threats didn't work, they would definitely show up in person. Sure enough, the next evening, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw 4 people standing outside, the whole family, lined up neatly. Every face wore an expression of accusation, as if I were the worst criminal. I said to Fiona, who was playing with our daughter Coco in the living room, "Take Coco to the bedroom and lock the door. Don't come out." Fiona nodded, picked up our daughter, and went into the bedroom. I took a deep breath and opened the door. They surged in like a tide. My mom, Susan, was at the front, and the moment she stepped in, she started wailing. "What sin did I commit to raise such an unfilial son? I slaved away to bring you up. And this is how you treat me. You finally opened the door. I thought you didn't even want your mother anymore. Look, Mom's so angry she's sick. Do you have any conscience at all? I didn't bother responding to their noise. I poured myself a glass of water and took a slow sip, watching them. Seeing that I wasn't saying anything, they made even more noise. The entire living room was filled with their crying, shouting, cursing, and accusing, like a shoddy farce. When they had finally tired themselves out, and their voices were getting hoarse, I slowly set down my glass. The clink of the glass against the glass coffee table made a crisp sound, and the living room fell instantly silent. 4 pairs of eyes were fixed on me. I took out a notebook and a pen from the drawer beside me. Since everyone's here today, let's settle the accounts. In 2010, Amanda said she was short on the down payment for her house and borrowed $100,000 from me. At the time, it was agreed to be a loan, but it's never been repaid. In 2012, Bella's husband's business failed, and they needed a quick turnaround. I gave $150,000. That money never came back either. In 2014, Chloe wanted to open a clothing store. I gave $200,000 as startup capital. Later the store went under, and of course the money disappeared. From 2015 up to last year, Mom asked for money under various pretexts: health issues, social obligations, household expenses, and took a total of over $400,000 from me. With each item I listed, I made a mark in the notebook. My voice wasn't loud, but in the quiet living room, every word was crystal clear. Their expressions changed bit by bit as I spoke. From self-righteousness to shock, and then to guilt. Now you're sitting on $60 million in demolition money, not a cent of which went to me, and yet you're accusing me of being unfilial? Don't you find that ridiculous? This is a family support and responsibility agreement I've drawn up. It's very simple. Whoever got the money takes on the responsibility of caring for Mom. Mom's $500,000 plus $2 million from each of you 3 sisters. That's more than enough for her to enjoy a very comfortable old age. You can either take Mom into your own homes or send her to a nursing home, with the costs split equally among the 3 of you. As long as you sign this agreement, I will never interfere in your lives again, and please don't interfere in mine. I pushed the agreement and the pen across the coffee table toward them. They stared at the agreement as if it were some kind of monster. Amanda's lips trembled. You're cutting ties with us? It's you who wants to cut ties with me. My mom, Susan, who had been silent all along, suddenly looked up and stared at me with piercing eyes. Her tears had dried, and her eyes held not grievance but a deep, bitter resentment. Ryan, don't you regret this? You don't deserve a single cent of that money. Her words stabbed into my heart like a poisoned needle. Why don't I deserve it? Don't you know very well what you did yourself? That question hit me like a thunderbolt in my mind. My father's death, it was a scar on my heart that would never heal, and a taboo that had been buried in this family for over a decade. My father died in my senior year of high school. It was a workplace accident. He fell from scaffolding and couldn't be saved by the time they got him to the hospital. That year, the sky fell. My mom cried her heart out. My 3 sisters wept every day. I locked myself in my room for 3 days and nights without eating or drinking. I hated the injustice of fate. I hated the construction site boss. I hated everything. And most of all, I hated myself. On the day of the accident, my father had been at home resting. It was because of me. Because I had a failing math test and was too scared to go home, wandering outside until dark. My father got worried, couldn't find me, and rode his old bicycle all over looking for me. Then he got a call from the foreman saying a shipment of materials had arrived and they needed extra hands to unload double pay. My father hesitated, but he thought of me, of my upcoming college entrance exams, of the money I would need in the future. He went. And he never came back. That event was the pain of my entire life, and the reason I worked so hard and tried so desperately to compensate this family. I thought they all understood. I thought they, like me, had buried that pain deep in their hearts. I never imagined that today, at this very moment, they would drag that filthiest bloodbath back out and throw it in my face. Who did Dad go to that construction site for back then, Ryan? You still have the nerve to bring that up? Yes, Ryan, the 3 of us sisters, we went out to work right after high school just so you could study in peace. They chimed in together, perfectly coordinated. My mom's crying resumed right on cue. When your father was dying, he held my hand and made me promise to get you through school. He said you were the only hope of the Ryan family. I promised him, and I kept my word. But you ungrateful brat, now that your wings are strong, you've forgotten where you came from. Their words were like sharp knives, each one drawing blood, each one piercing my heart. I looked at these three women I called my family. On their faces hung grief and accusation, but in their eyes flickered greed and calculation. So that was it. In their minds, my father's death wasn't an accident, it was my original sin. All my years of giving weren't love, they were atonement. The money I gave them wasn't out of affection. It was just compensation I owed. Now that the demolition money had come, in their view, it was money my father bought with his life. And I, the sinner, naturally didn't deserve a single cent of it. That money was rightfully theirs, compensation for all their sacrifices over the years. What a perfectly closed loop of logic. What a laughable self-hypnosis. I laughed, a low, cold chuckle that grew into uncontrollable laughter. My laughter echoed through the living room, harsh and jarring. They were all stunned by it. Slowly, I stopped laughing, but tears had formed at the corners of my eyes. I stood up, walked step by step to my mom, and looked down at her from above. Mom, when Dad died, how much was the compensation from the construction site? Susan's face went pale. Her eyes darted, her lips trembled, but she couldn't speak. Let me answer for you. It was $300,000. 15 years ago, that was a fortune. What did you do with that money? You paid for my 4 years of college tuition and living expenses, less than $50,000 total. What about the remaining $250,000? When Amanda got married, you gave her $80,000 as a dowry. When Bella got married, you gave her $80,000. Chloe got scammed by her boyfriend and lost $50,000. The last $40,000 you said you were keeping for your own retirement. Am I right? Susan was trembling all over, unable to say a word. The faces of my three sisters turned extremely ugly. I had never mentioned any of this before, because I thought that was my father's death benefit. He was your husband. You had the right to use it. I thought you had a conscience. I thought you still had at least a shred of guilt toward me, your only son. Now I see I was being naive. Not only do you have no guilt whatsoever, you've shifted all the blame onto me, using my father's death to morally blackmail me, using so-called family ties to squeeze me dry without end. Susan, put your hand on your heart and ask yourself, are you worthy of my father? Are you worthy of the word mother? Every word I spoke hit her like a heavy hammer. She finally broke down. She suddenly lunged at me, her face twisted with rage, reaching for my face with her claws. I was ready and sidestepped. She missed, stumbled, and nearly fell. Chloe was quick. She grabbed her, and then she too charged at me like a madwoman. How dare you talk to Mom like that? I'll fight you. The farce had finally turned into a full-blown brawl. I didn't fight back. I just watched them coldly. Watched them throw tantrums and go berserk in the home I had built with my own hands, like watching a troupe of clowns. Their movements froze instantly. Fiona's appearance was like a bucket of ice water dousing the fiery madness in the living room. My mom and my three sisters all stared blankly at her. They had never expected gentle, demure Fiona to be so firm. Fiona, you. This is my home. You are not welcome here. I heard every word you said to my husband. Her words left them speechless. I looked at my wife, and a wave of warmth surged in my heart. Over the years, she had endured too much. Every time my mom and sisters made unreasonable demands, she suffered in silence to keep me from being caught in the middle. Today, she finally stopped holding back because they had crossed her line. They were hurting her husband, destroying her family. Chloe, red-faced and humiliated, lashed out. This is a Ryan family matter. What business is it of yours? You're an outsider. I've been married to Ryan for 8 years. I've borne him a child, shared his hardships, and stood by him through thick and thin. I am the mistress of this house. But you, each of you married daughters, taking money that my husband worked so hard to earn to subsidize your own families? Who's the real outsider here? That sentence tore off their last shred of decency. Bella's face flushed red and pale by turns. She tugged at Chloe's sleeve, signaling her to stop. Any more, and it would only get uglier. Susan just stared blankly at Fiona, then at me, her eyes full of disbelief. In her mind, a daughter-in-law should be long-suffering and submissive. She probably never dreamed that Fiona would stand up and use such sharp words against her. The living room fell into a deathly silence, a tense standoff that dragged on. Finally, I broke the suffocating quiet. The agreement is on the table. Sign it, and we'll still be relatives. Don't sign it, and we'll settle it in court. Every single transaction I mentioned has a transfer record. That $850,000 I can sue you for private lending. You'll not only have to pay it back, but also interest for all those years. The choice is yours. My words were the last straw. True fear finally appeared on their faces. A lawsuit, they'd never even considered it. In their understanding, a son's money was family money. theirs to take as they pleased, a natural right. How could it ever end up in court? But the icy look in my eyes told them I wasn't joking. They were genuinely scared. If we really went to court, not only would they have to cough up all the money they'd taken over the years, but their reputations would be ruined too. How could they ever hold their heads up among relatives and friends again? Amanda and Bella exchanged glances, hesitation and conflict written all over their faces. Only Chloe still looked defiant, but even she didn't dare shout anymore. Finally, it was Susan. She shuffled tremblingly to the coffee table, picked up the agreement, and stared hard at the black words on the white paper. She said, "Fine," 3 times in a row, each word squeezed through her teeth. "Ryan, you're ruthless enough." She picked up the pen and signed her name at the bottom of the agreement, as if using every last ounce of her strength. One by one, Amanda, Bella, and Chloe stepped forward. They looked ashen, mechanically signing their names on the agreement. Looking at those 4 signed agreements, I felt only boundless sorrow. A family bond that had lasted over 30 years, in the face of money and scheming, it was as thin as paper, torn apart with a single tug. "Get out." I ground out the word between my teeth. They scurried away like pardoned criminals, fleeing the place that had humiliated them so thoroughly. At the door, Susan stopped and turned back to look at me. Her gaze was unfathomably cold, with a strange glint I couldn't decipher, as if to say this wasn't over. The door slammed shut. Finally, the world was quiet. Fiona put away her phone and walked over to me, giving me a gentle hug. I hugged her back, burying my face in her shoulder. My hardened armor shattered inch by inch in that moment. Like a child, I wept silently. This wasn't the end. I knew that very well. Knowing my mom and those 3 sisters as I did, they would never let this go so easily. A bigger storm was probably brewing. The next day I went to work as usual. As soon as I arrived at the office, my assistant Kevin walked in nervously. "Mr. Ryan, there are a lot of people downstairs. They say they're your family. They're making a scene at the front desk." My heart sank. Here it came, as expected. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and looked out. Sure enough, a crowd had gathered in the lobby of our company building. Susan was sitting on the floor, slapping her thigh and wailing. Amanda and Bella were flanking her, crying and complaining to the surrounding employees and clients. Chloe was the most agitated, holding up a printed poster with bold black letters, condemning the unfilial son Ryan, millions in compensation, yet he kicks his own mother out. They had also brought along some helpers, a bunch of distant relatives from our hometown and some nosy neighbors, about 20 or 30 people, blocking the company entrance completely. This scene came faster and more melodramatic than I had imagined. They were going all out, trying to crush me with public opinion, destroy my reputation, ruin my career. Kevin looked at me anxiously. "Mr. Ryan, what should we do now? Should we call the police?" "Let them make a scene. The bigger, the better." Kevin was stunned. He didn't understand. I went back to my desk and called the head of administration and the head of legal. "Tell security not to clash with them. Keep order, protect company property and employee safety. Send someone from legal down to record everything on video. Also, call the media, all the major outlets, and tell them there's big news happening at our company entrance." I gave my instructions clearly, one after another. Though surprised, both the admin and legal directors immediately carried them out. I knew what my mom and sisters were thinking. They were certain that as a senior executive at a large company, I cared most about my image and reputation. If they made enough noise to embarrass me, I would cave, take them back home, feed and house them well, and even redistribute that $5 million. But they miscalculated. They thought I cared most about face. In truth, I had already given up that face long ago. They were the ones who tore it to shreds. The commotion outside the company grew louder and louder. Susan's acting was top-notch. She sobbed so hard she seemed about to faint at any moment. My sister's accusations became even more tearful and dramatic, painting themselves as poor little flowers oppressed by a wicked brother. More and more onlookers gathered. The murmuring grew louder. People who didn't know the truth started to condemn me. Reporters arrived too, pointing their cameras at Susan and my sister's heart-wrenching faces, flashbulbs popping incessantly. Carefully orchestrated family melodrama was unfolding. They were the protagonists, and I was the villain. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Company executives, partners, friends all asking what was going on. I didn't answer. I was waiting for the perfect moment. By 2 in the afternoon, news about Ryan, a senior executive at a listed company, abusing his elderly mother, was already trending online. All sorts of embellished posts were flooding out. My photo, my job title, even my home address had been doxed. I had become the internet's public enemy number one to the unfilial son. The emotions of the crowd downstairs had also reached a fever pitch. Chloe, seeing the moment was ripe, screamed at the camera with all her might. "If you don't give us a satisfactory answer today, we won't leave. We'll let everyone see what a beast you really are." I picked up a few documents from my desk, straightened my suit, and walked into the elevator under the gaze of my colleagues, some sympathetic, some disdainful, some curious. The noisy clamor of the lobby hit me instantly as I stepped out, all eyes fixed on me. The reporters' lenses immediately swung in my direction. Susan and my sisters were momentarily stunned. Then smug grins spread across their faces. They thought I had caved and come down to surrender. I walked through the crowd and stopped in front of them. I didn't look at them. I took a megaphone from my legal director, then faced all the reporters and all the onlookers and gave a deep bow. First of all, I sincerely apologize for this family farce taking up public resources and causing inconvenience to everyone. Today, my mother and my 3 sisters are here accusing me of being unfilial. Some of what they say is true. For example, I did suggest that my mother go to a nursing home, and I do indeed no longer want to take care of them. My words caused an uproar. No one expected me to admit my crimes so openly. The smug looks on my mom and sister's faces grew even deeper. Ignoring the murmurs around me, I continued, "But everything has a cause and effect. Today, I would also like to ask all the media friends and everyone present here to see the whole truth." With that, I pressed the play button on a USB drive in my hand. The huge LED screen on the exterior wall of my company building behind me suddenly lit up. The video Fiona had recorded at home yesterday appeared clearly on the screen. In the video, Susan viciously lunged at me. Chloe screamed like a mad woman. Their tantrums, their hideous behavior were all captured in high definition. There was absolute dead silence. On the giant LED screen, the footage looped continuously. Susan's face, twisted with rage, was displayed in crystal clarity before everyone. Chloe's shrieking, like a fishwife's curses, echoed through the entire square via the megaphone. Amanda and Bella's instigating and fanning the flames were also captured without missing a frame. The whole world fell silent. The crowd that had been pointing fingers at me just moments ago was now utterly quiet. Their expressions shifted from contempt to shock, then to disbelief, and finally settled into a complex look of sympathy and understanding. The reporters' cameras frantically swung from the screen to my mother and sisters, whose faces had gone pale as ghosts. They stood frozen like 3 statues struck by lightning. The color drained from their faces in plain sight. Their mouths hung open, but no sound came out, only pure terror and disbelief in their eyes. They probably never imagined, even at death's door, that what happened in the house had been recorded, let alone that I would dare to broadcast that video in front of so many people. It was a public execution, and the executors were the son and little brother they had always seen as the most docile and easiest to push around. Chloe was the first to break down, letting out a piercing shriek, her voice suddenly sounding particularly harsh and utterly powerless in the silence. No one believed her. Every expression, every movement in the video was starkly real, the kind of venom and madness that came from the heart, impossible to fake. I didn't bother with her last-ditch struggle. I took several other documents out of my briefcase. Dear media friends, these are some of my transfer records to my mother and 3 sisters over the years, totaling 850,000 yuan. Every single transaction has bank statements that can be verified. This is the demolition agreement for the old house, which clearly states the total compensation is 5 million. And this is the family support agreement that my mother and 3 sisters signed yesterday, which stipulates that, since the demolition money has been fully distributed to the 3 daughters, the responsibility for our mother's elderly care shall be borne jointly by the 3 daughters. As for their claim that I kicked my mother out, Mom, let me ask you one more time. Did I ever once say get out to you? Did I ever lay a finger on you? I simply asked you and my sisters to leave my home after you came to my house, made a scene, and even attacked me. Is that also considered unfilial? Susan trembled violently, her lips quivering, unable to form a single word. Murmurs began to ripple through the crowd. In the face of ironclad facts, public opinion reversed in an instant. All sympathy shifted to me. All the contempt and curses now flooded toward my mother and sisters like a tidal wave. Trapped by those stares and whispers, their faces turned deathly white. Amanda and Bella had completely panicked. instinctively trying to step back to escape this place that had become their ultimate humiliation. Chloe was still making a last-ditch effort. She tried to lunge at me and snatch the documents from my hand, but my legal team and security immediately stepped forward and blocked her. I looked at her coldly. Chloe, the agreement has all 4 of your signatures. If you think they're forged, we can apply for a handwriting appraisal right now. Do you know the consequences of lying in public, slander, and defamation? My words instantly extinguished Chloe's bluster. She was afraid. She saw the icy look in my eyes and knew I was capable of anything. And my mom, Susan, who had been silent throughout, after enduring this ultimate humiliation and blow, finally had a mental breakdown. Her eyes rolled back, her legs gave way, and she collapsed backward. The 3 sisters screamed and rushed to catch her, and the scene descended into chaos. Reporters swarmed in, flashes popping like crazy. I watched it all coldly, without a shred of sympathy. This was what they had brought on themselves. When they decided to destroy me to get what they wanted, they should have foreseen this ending. The company's security and administrative staff quickly restored order. An ambulance arrived soon after. Susan was loaded onto a stretcher, and my 3 sisters, like defeated dogs, climbed into the ambulance after her. And so ended the grand, sensational farce. The crowd gradually dispersed. The reporters got everything they wanted and left contentedly. The square returned to its usual calm, as if nothing had ever happened. But I knew that, from today on, everything was different. I had completely severed ties with that so-called family. There was no turning back. Back in my office, all the colleagues I passed looked at me with complex emotions. Sympathy, admiration, even a trace of fear. No one dared to speak to me. They probably hadn't expected that their usually mild-mannered Mr. Ryan, when dealing with family matters, could be so decisive and merciless. My boss, the CEO, Mr. Thompson, called me into his office. I thought he would reprimand me for damaging the company's image. Instead, he just handed me a bottle of water. I read you right. You're capable and have backbone. Deal with your family affairs quickly, and don't let them affect your work. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I understand. Walking out of Mr. Thompson's office, a weight lifted off my shoulders. It seemed the workplace was more straightforward than I'd imagined. As long as you can create value, your personal life isn't the deciding factor, provided you can handle your problems. And I had. Over the next few hours, the internet exploded. The entire spectacle outside my company was covered by countless media outlets. That high-definition video spread everywhere. Public opinion was overwhelmingly one-sided. All the abuse was directed at my mother and sisters. Netizens mercilessly slapped them with the label, Most Disgusting Family of the Year. Their names, workplaces, even phone numbers were doxed by angry netizens, and endless harassing calls and abusive texts rained down on them. I, on the other hand, was portrayed as a beautiful, strong, and tragic figure, a victim of family exploitation who finally fought back. My social media accounts gained 1 million followers overnight. Countless people left messages of support and sympathy. Some lawyers even offered free legal aid. I knew I had won this public opinion war, thoroughly and completely. When I got home that evening, Fiona and Coco were waiting for me. As soon as I walked in, Fiona gave me a big hug. You were amazing today. I smiled, the fatigue of the day melting away. Coco ran over and grabbed my leg. Daddy, did you beat the bad guys? Yes, I did. They won't bother us anymore. That night, Fiona and I lay in bed talking about everything that had happened. Fiona was a little worried. Aren't you afraid they might try something else? Like going to Coco's kindergarten? I paused. That was a blind spot I hadn't considered. I'd been focused on protecting myself and the company, but I'd forgotten my softest underbelly, my wife and daughter. Don't worry. Tomorrow I'll contact a security company to protect you and Coco 24/7. I'll also talk to the kindergarten. No one except us is allowed to pick up Coco. I've seen their limits. They'll do anything for money. I won't give them another chance to hurt you. Fiona nodded and rested her head on my shoulder. That night, I didn't sleep well. I dreamed of my father, still, with that simple, honest look, silently watching me, his eyes full not of blame, but of pity. The next day I got a call from an unfamiliar number. On the other end was a frail, weak voice. It was Susan. Your sisters have all been fired from their jobs. Their houses were splashed with paint. We can't even leave the house now. Ryan, can you forgive Mom? Please put out a statement telling everyone it was all a misunderstanding. Otherwise, we really can't go on living. It's too late for that now, I said flatly, and hung up. I thought that would be the end of it. They'd been crushed by the hammer of public opinion and would lie low for a while. But I underestimated their madness. and Susan's deep-seated hatred for me. 3 days later, I was in an important project meeting when Fiona called. Her voice carried unprecedented panic and tears. "Rian, come home quickly. Your mother, she's sitting at our doorstep with a gas canister." My mind went blank. A gas canister? A suicide bomb? I couldn't believe my ears. Was this something a mother could do? Everyone in the meeting room stared at me. Without time to explain, I grabbed my car keys and ran out. Meeting adjourned. I raced down the elevator, out of the building, and drove like a madman. Pedal to the metal. My palms were drenched in cold sweat, my heart pounding wildly. I couldn't imagine the danger at home. What about Fiona and Coco? I called Fiona's number over and over, but no one answered. Fear gripped my heart like an invisible vice. The drive that normally took 15 minutes felt like an eternity. At the entrance to the neighborhood, I was stopped by security. In the distance, I could see our building surrounded by a crowd. Police cars and fire trucks were already there, yellow tape cordoning off the area. I got out and ran desperately. "Let me in. That's my house." "Sir, you can't go in. It's dangerous." "I'm the homeowner. My wife and children are inside." "Mr. Ryan, please calm down. Your mother is extremely agitated. She's holding a lighter and won't let anyone near her. She's asking for you by name." Through the gaps in the crowd, I saw the scene that nearly stopped my heart. In front of our door, Susan was sitting on the ground, hair disheveled. In front of her lay a rusty gas canister. Her left hand gripped the valve tightly, and her right hand held a red lighter high in the air. Her eyes no longer held the previous venom and calculation. It was pure, unadulterated madness. A desperate resolve to drag everyone down to hell with her. My 3 sisters were kneeling not far behind her, crying their hearts out. They were genuinely terrified. They wanted me to cave, to get their money back. But they didn't want to die. Now the situation had spiraled completely out of control. The bomb they had lit with their own hands could explode at any moment. "Let that bastard come see me," Susan shrieked. Hearing that, half my anxiety eased. At least Fiona and Coco were safe. I took the loudspeaker handed to me by the police and walked step by step toward the cordon. "What do you want?" I asked. "You ruined me. You ruined this family. You made us all outcasts. I want you to live in regret and pain for the rest of your life." "Sisters, you see this? This is your wonderful mother. This is what you pushed her to for $2 million each. Are you satisfied now? Stop talking nonsense. You get on the internet right now and tell everyone everything before was a misunderstanding, that you wronged us, that you were blind. Then take that $5 million and split it again. I don't care how you do it. Borrow, sell your house, but put the money in front of me now. Otherwise." She finally revealed her true aim. The dagger was drawn. So after all this circling, it was still about the money, threatening everyone's lives to get me to hand over cash. I laughed. A laugh of utter desolation. "Mom, do you really think I'll cave? Do you think I care most about this house? You're wrong. From the moment you sat down at my door with a gas canister, from the moment you threatened my wife and daughter's lives, in my heart, you're no longer my mother. You're just a kidnapper trying to hurt my family." My words were like a knife straight through her heart. She froze. Everyone around froze too. "What did you say?" she stammered. "I said your threats are useless. If this house burns down, I can buy another. If I lose my job, I can find another. As long as my wife and child are safe, I'm not afraid of anything. But what you did today already constitutes endangering public safety. If convicted, you're looking at 10 years or more, life in prison, even the death penalty." "Susan, have you thought this through? For a little money, for your pathetic need for control, is it worth throwing away the rest of your life, maybe even your life itself?" Susan's face turned deathly pale. The hand holding the lighter began to tremble slightly. The law was something she had never considered. She thought that between mother and son, there was only morality, not law. She thought she could do anything, and it was her natural right. I had shattered her last illusion. Just as her resolve wavered, several firefighters who had been lying in ambush pounced like panthers. One grabbed the lighter, one seized the gas valve, and 2 others pinned her to the ground. It all happened in the blink of an eye. The crisis was over. Susan was still struggling wildly, letting out animalistic howls. But it was futile. Cold handcuffs snapped around her wrists. Her final act of madness ended in utter humiliation. Watching my mother being led into the police car, and my 3 sisters collapsing to the ground, ashen-faced and weeping, I felt no satisfaction, only a dead, barren silence. This family, from today on, was completely destroyed. I was taken to the police station, not as a suspect, but as a victim. In a stark interrogation room, with harsh white lights. The officer across the table handed me a cup of hot water. "Mr. Ryan, thank you for your cooperation. We need a detailed statement from you." I nodded and recounted everything that had happened that day. From Fiona's call to my arrival home to my confrontation with Susan. My tone was calm, as if telling a story about someone else. The officer took notes and looked up at me now and then with a hint of sympathy. After I finished the statement, I walked out of the interrogation room. At the end of the hallway, I saw my 3 sisters. They had also been brought in for questioning. All their former arrogance had vanished, replaced by fear and confusion. When Amanda saw me, she instinctively stood up and opened her mouth as if to say something. I didn't give her the chance. I walked past them without a sideways glance, as if they were just meaningless pockets of air. Their eyes shifted from pleading to hatred. I knew what they were thinking. They believed I, their own brother, had personally put our mother in prison. They would never stop to think who had pushed her step by step to the brink of madness. Outside the police station, night had fallen. The cold wind hit my face, but I felt a clarity I had never known before. My lawyer, Mark, was waiting for me at the entrance. He patted my shoulder. "It's all handled. Your mother's actions are extremely serious. This is no longer just a family dispute. Endangering public safety is a felony." "How long will she get?" "Considering there was no actual casualty or property damage, but the social impact is extremely severe. Preliminary estimate, 10 years minimum." 10 years. I repeated the number in my mind. No satisfaction, no sorrow, just a numb sense of finality. Susan would spend the rest of her life behind bars. That was the path she had chosen. Back in the car, I called Fiona. The moment she answered, her tearful voice came through. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Don't worry." "Is Coco asleep?" "Yes. My parents came over to stay with us." "Good. I'll come home now. We're going to sell this house. Move away. Leave all these terrible memories behind. We'll start over." "Okay, we'll start over." I hung up, started the engine, and merged into the city's flow of traffic. Outside the window, countless lights glittered like a river of stars. I knew that from this moment on, I had completely severed ties with that so-called family. Ahead of me was my own path, one leading to new life, and to the unknown. Life seemed to return to calm overnight, but something had been forever changed. Susan was in criminal custody, awaiting the full force of the law. The news exploded like a bomb in our extended family circles. No one dared to call me anymore. Those relatives, who had once lectured me with moral outrage, now kept silent as cicadas in winter. They were afraid of me, this madman who had cut off his own family. Fiona's parents took her and Coco back to her family home for a while so I could deal with the aftermath. I started selling our current house and looking for a new place. I wanted to give my wife and daughter a truly safe, warm home. Just when I thought everything would finally settle down, my 3 sisters came to see me again. This time, they didn't come to my house or my company. They reached out through Mark and asked to meet at a cafe. I didn't want to go, but Mark said they seemed sincere. Maybe they wanted to negotiate compensation and settlement. To end things completely, I went. When I arrived, they were already there. A few days had aged them by years. All their former glamour had been replaced by haggardness and dejection, hollow eyes, dull expressions. When they saw me, they stood up nervously. I didn't speak, just sat down across from them. Mark sat beside me. "What do you want?" We came to apologize to you on Mom's behalf. She was wrong. We were all wrong. We shouldn't have been blinded by money. We shouldn't have treated you like that." Chloe, once the most aggressive, now sat with her head down, silent, her fingers nervously picking at the table corner. I watched their pathetic performance and felt nothing. No need to apologize. If that's all you came to say, I'm leaving. We know we were wrong. We're willing to give the money back. All $6 million. We don't want a cent. Just ask you to go to the police and forgive Mom. Write a letter of leniency. She's old. She's not well. If she really gets 10 years. So this was their real goal. Using money to buy her freedom. Using that pile of dirty, scheming cash to save their mother and their own consciences for the rest of their lives. I laughed. "Amanda, are you misunderstanding something? What Mom did wasn't a family dispute. It was endangering public safety. She threatened not just me, but every resident in that building. My letter of leniency won't change the verdict." "Then what will happen? Will Mom really go to prison?" "That's what she deserves. That's exactly what she deserves." From the moment she sat at my door with a gas canister and threatened my wife and daughter's safety, in my heart, she was already dead. And you're the ones who pushed her to the edge. When the demolition money came, you divided it among yourselves and pushed the responsibility of caring for her onto me. When I refused, you encouraged her to come to my company and destroy my reputation. When she was on the verge of a breakdown, you kept fanning the flames until she did something extreme. And now you want me to take the fall? Do you think that's fair? With that, I stood up and walked out of the cafe without another glance. Behind me, I heard their desperate, stifled sobs. I knew this was the last conversation I would ever have with them. From that day on, our lives would never intersect again. A month later, I sold the house. On the day I signed the papers, I went back to the empty apartment alone. All the furniture had been moved, leaving only scattered debris and memories. I had lived here for 8 years. I once thought this place was the fruit of my hard work, a symbol of my success. Now it held only endless arguments, betrayal, and pain. I felt not a single trace of attachment. Fiona and I bought a bigger house on the other side of the city. Better school district, quieter neighborhood. Coco was overjoyed because she finally had a princess room with a bay window. Fiona was happy too, because she finally had her own sun-drenched study. Our lives were slowly returning to normal. Susan's case had entered the judicial process. Trial and sentencing were just a matter of time. Mark told me she'd likely get 10 years. My 3 sisters had vanished completely from my life. I heard they sold their houses in our hometown and left the city where they couldn't show their faces anymore. Where they went, I didn't know, and I didn't want to know. We were like 2 lines that had crossed. After that brief intersection, we headed forever in opposite directions. Before moving into our new home, I had to go back to the old family house one last time to deal with some of my father's belongings. The old house, which had held my entire childhood, was about to be demolished. My father's things had been locked in an old wooden chest in the attic by my mother. I climbed up the creaky stairs and found the dusty chest. I opened the lock. Inside were some of my father's old possessions. A few faded shirts, an enamel mug he'd used for decades, a few labor model medals, and his favorite chess set. I took each item out, one by one, wiping the dust off with my fingers. Memories flooded back. My father was a man of few words, not good at talking, but always expressing his love through actions. He would use his rough hands to peel a beautiful apple for me. When I got a bad test score and my mom scolded me, he would secretly pull me aside and slip me a few bucks for pocket money. He would ride that old bicycle and carry me down one country lane after another. As I remembered, my eyes grew wet. Dad, if you were still here and saw what our family has become, how disappointed you would be. As I was sorting through the chest, my hand touched something hard in a hidden compartment at the bottom. I pried it open. Inside was a small iron box wrapped tightly in oilcloth. My heart stirred. I opened the box. There was no jewelry or valuables inside, just a stack of yellowed letters and a similarly yellowed, neatly folded document. I opened the document first. The moment it unfolded, I stopped breathing. It was a hospital birth certificate. In the column for the baby's name, it said Ryan. In the column for father's name, it said James, my father. But in the column for mother's name, it didn't say Susan. It said a name I had never heard before. Lily. My mind went blank. A thunderbolt seemed to explode over my head, shattering everything I knew. This wasn't my mother's name. Susan was not my biological mother. My whole body went cold, my fingers trembling as I picked up the stack of letters. They were written by my father to that woman named Lily, or rather, drafts that were never sent. The handwriting was my father's familiar scrawl. Lily, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for you. I'm sorry for Ryan. Susan found out. She made a huge scene. She said if I didn't break it off with you, she'd go to your workplace and ruin you, make you a pariah. I'm useless. I was scared. I could only choose to betray you. I will raise Ryan as my own son. Don't worry. I owe you this for life, James. Letter after letter, between the lines were a man's lifelong regret, cowardice, and guilt. They pieced together a truth that had been buried for over 30 years. I was never Susan's son. I was my father's son with another woman. Susan raised me not out of motherly love, but out of control over my father, and out of hatred for me, an outsider. No wonder she had been so abusive to me since I was little. No wonder she gave all her love to my 3 sisters. No wonder, when she split the demolition money, she said, "You don't deserve a single cent of that money." In her heart, I was never Orion. I was just a bastard hatchling in a borrowed nest, a living stain of humiliation she had hated her whole life. I sat there on the cold attic floor, clutching the birth certificate and those letters, tears silently streaming down my face. So all my life, the family I had fought so desperately to hold together was a lie from the start. The half a lifetime of gratitude I had tried to repay was built on such ugly truth. How laughable. I, Ryan, had been an outsider all along. I don't know how long I sat in that cold attic. Time seemed to lose all meaning. I wiped the dust off my face, took one last look at that attic that had held all my childhood nightmares, and then walked downstairs without looking back. This old house needed to be torn down, along with all those unbearable pasts, buried forever in the dust. I walked out of the old house. The sunlight outside was a little blinding. I started the car and left that alley where I'd lived for 18 years. I didn't go to our new home. I drove to the riverbank. I rolled down the window and lit a cigarette. In the swirling smoke, my thoughts gradually cleared. I was not Susan's son. That realization was like a key unlocking all the chains that had bound me. I no longer owed her anything. The so-called nurturing grace, in the face of over 30 years of emotional abuse and endless exploitation, had long since been erased. The $850,000 and more I had given this family was more than enough to settle any debt. Legally, I was still her adopted son and bore some responsibility. But emotionally, there was only hatred left between us. I pulled out my phone and called Mark. Mark, how's Susan's case going? Still in process. The facts are clear. The evidence chain is solid. No surprises. Good. I found some new information. I briefly told him what I discovered in the old house. There was a long silence on the other end. Ryan, I'm fine, Mark. I just want to know one thing. Will this background affect Susan's case? Or can I legally sever our mother-son relationship? Ryan, it's complicated. Legally, you and Susan have formed a de facto adoptive relationship. Even if you find proof of your biological mother, going through the process to unilaterally terminate that relationship is extremely difficult, especially at this critical point when she's about to be sentenced. The court is likely to see it as you trying to evade your support obligations. However, this truth can serve as strong character evidence. It can show the judge that Susan has held long-term prejudice against you and emotionally abused you. While it won't change the charge of endangering public safety during the judge's overall consideration, it might help explain some of her motives. Even if those motives are twisted, simply put, it won't change the outcome, but it will make the whole truth clearer. I understand. I hung up. The last thread of hope was severed. I couldn't legally erase her from my life, but I could banish her completely from my world. I drove back to my in-laws' place. Fiona and Coco ran to me immediately. Where have you been? I couldn't reach you on the phone. Daddy, why are your eyes red? Daddy's fine. I just miss Coco a little. I could feel my body trembling slightly. Only here, in this harbor full of love, could I drop all my defenses. At dinner, I was distracted. My in-laws noticed something was off, but didn't pry. Fiona kept piling food on my plate, her eyes full of concern. That night, after Coco fell asleep, Fiona and I went back to our room. I closed the door and took out the small iron box from my backpack. Fiona looked at me quizzically. What's this? I didn't say anything. Just opened the box and handed her the birth certificate and the letters. Fiona took them, read them word by word under the bedside lamp. The room was silent, except for the rustling of paper and our increasingly heavy breathing. I watched Fiona's face. Her expression shifted from confusion to shock, to disbelief, and finally to deep, aching sympathy. She looked up, her eyes already red. It's all in the past. From now on, you have me, you have Coco. We are your real family. That night, we talked for hours. I told her everything, from childhood to now, every detail I had tried to forget, every pain I had suppressed. Those neglected wounds, reopened at this moment, hurt, but at last, they could see the light. Fiona was the best listener. She didn't offer too many comforting words. She just listened quietly, using her gentleness and understanding to heal my inner wounds little by little. By dawn, we fell asleep in each other's arms. This time, I slept especially soundly. When I woke up, sunlight filled the whole room. The gloom in my heart seemed to have been dispelled by that light. We decided not to seek out Lily for now. The events of the past were too complicated. Barging in rashly might stir up unknown storms. What we needed most right now was a peaceful life. A month later, Susan's trial took place. I didn't attend. Fiona didn't either. We didn't want to see that face that made us sick. On the day of the verdict, Mark called me. Endangering public safety, the charge stands. Considering no serious consequences occurred, but the social impact was extremely severe, and she shows no remorse, the final sentence is 12 years. 12 years. 2 more than I'd expected. Perhaps the evidence I'd provided had shown the judge her twisted nature. I held the phone for a long time. It was over. I hung up and walked to the balcony. Below, In the brand new neighborhood garden, children were laughing and playing. In the distance, the city was bustling with life and vitality. I took a deep breath. Time is the best healer. A year's time was enough for many wounds to scar over, for many memories to fade. Our new home had long been decorated warm and cozy. Every corner was filled with Fiona and Coco's laughter. My career had also reached a new height. That public family scandal hadn't hurt my career. On the contrary, it had shown the company's upper management my decisiveness and sense of responsibility. Not long after the dust settled, I was promoted to executive vice president, put in charge of a major new project. I was busier than before, but my heart was more settled than ever. Because I knew I was no longer fighting for some illusory family. I was fighting for my wife, my daughter, for this truly warm little family we had built together. Fiona quit her previous job and became a freelance writer. She wrote articles about family and parenting that became very popular. We had more time to spend with Coco. On weekends, we'd go on picnics, to amusement parks, to museums. Coco was much more outgoing than before, always wearing a carefree smile on her face. Watching the two of them smile, I felt this was everything I'd ever wanted. As for those unpleasant people and things, they seemed to have been left far behind. Susan was serving her time in prison. My 3 sisters, I heard, had sold all their assets in our hometown and disappeared completely. They never contacted me again, and I was happy for the peace. The iron box containing the secret of my origins was locked in my study safe. I rarely touched it. Let that secret stay buried forever. I didn't want to chase any more truths. My mother was Fiona's mom, Coco's grandmother, that kind, loving old woman who made us delicious food and took care of us when we were sick. That was enough. Life was as calm as a lake, without ripples. I even thought we would go on like this, happy and peaceful, forever. Until the day I received a letter, sent from a city I'd never heard of. The envelope was craft paper, no return address, only a strange address. The postmark was from a week ago. Curious, I opened it. Inside was a single printed sheet. The content was short, but every word hit me like a hammer. Mr. Ryan, hello. Please forgive this presumptuous letter. I am a social worker at A10 Hospice Care Center. We have a patient here named Lily. She is in the late stages of cancer and has little time left. While sorting through her belongings, we found an old address book with your name in it. After much verification, we have confirmed your identity. Miss Lily has never married and has no children, but in her final moments, she keeps repeating a name over and over. That name is you, Ryan. She says she wants to see you one last time. This is her last wish. At the end of the letter was the address and phone number of the hospice. My hands began to tremble uncontrollably. That light piece of paper now weighed 1,000 pounds. Lily. This name I had only seen on my birth certificate and in my father's letters. My biological mother, she was dying. She wanted to see me. This news was like a stone thrown into a calm lake, instantly stirring 1,000 ripples. The peace and happiness I had just built was now torn open by a huge crack. What should I do? Go or not? Reason told me I shouldn't go. She and I were just strangers bound by blood. She had been absent from my life for over 30 years. I had no obligation to fulfill her so-called last wish. My life had finally gotten back on track. I shouldn't go touching that complicated past again. But emotionally, something was pulling at me. That was my birth mother. Why did she give me up to my father? How had she lived all these years? Why did she never marry? Why no children? Countless questions surged in my mind like a tide. I knew that if I didn't go, those questions would never be answered, and I might carry that regret for the rest of my life. Fiona came out of the study and saw me looking lost. She was startled. What's wrong? What happened? I didn't say anything, just handed her the letter. She read it, and her expression grew as complex as mine. She walked over and took my cold hand in hers. We looked at each other, both full of confusion. Go, she said softly. Don't go. I shook my head, then nodded. My mind was already in chaos. To go see a dying stranger, to open a secret buried for over 30 years. Was I really ready for that? That night, I lay awake until dawn. Fiona slept beside me, breathing evenly, while I stared at the ceiling, letting my thoughts churn in the darkness. 2 names warred in my mind. Susan and Lily. One was the woman I'd called Mom. For over 30 years, she had given me endless pain and torment, and now sat in prison. The other was the woman who gave me life. She had been absent from my world for half a lifetime, and now was at death's door. Hate and resentment, mercy and regret, 2 completely different emotions clashed like 2 violent currents in my heart. Go or not? This question hung over me like a giant scale. On one side was the peaceful life I had fought so hard to build, My wife, my daughter, my flourishing career. This was the harbor I had bought with blood and tears, the most precious thing in my life. To go see Lily would mean reopening that bloody wound, stepping back into a past I had vowed to bury forever. The unknown truth might bring new pain, new storms. I was afraid this newly healed wound would tear open again. I was afraid my hard-won psychological defenses would collapse. I was afraid it would affect Fiona and Coco, affect this fragile new family of ours. On the other side of the scale was that woman named Lily, that soon-to-vanish life, that enormous mystery about my origins that had haunted me for over 30 years. Why did she give me to my father? Why did she never marry? Why no children? What happened between her and my father? These questions were like sharp thorns stuck in my heart. If I didn't go, those thorns would stay forever. They would remind me every day that I was a man who didn't even know where he came from. Rootless. They would haunt me on every quiet night. I would spend my whole life guessing, imagining. Fiona was right. Going or not going were both reasonable choices. One was to protect the present, the other to settle the past. How was I to choose? I got up quietly and went to the living room. I poured myself a glass of cold water. The icy liquid slid down my throat, clearing my mind a little. I walked to Coco's bedroom door and gently pushed it open a crack. In the faint light from the hallway, I saw my daughter's peaceful sleeping face. A sweet smile still lingered on her little face. What kind of happy dream was she having? Looking at her, a complex emotion suddenly welled up in my heart. Someday, when she grew up, she would ask me, "Daddy, what was your mom like? What about my grandma?" How would I answer then? Would I tell her about Susan, the woman whose hatred and greed landed her in prison? Or would I tell her that I had another grandmother, a blood relative I'd never met? If I couldn't even face my own past, what right did I have to guide my daughter through her life? In that moment, the scale in my heart began to tilt. Running away wouldn't solve anything. It would only make the hole in my heart grow bigger. Maybe what I needed wasn't protection, it was reconciliation. To put a proper period to the first half of my life. Only then could I truly move forward without baggage. I went back to the bedroom. Fiona was already awake, leaning against the headboard, watching me quietly. "Have you decided?" she asked. "I want to go. Not for her. For myself. I want to know the truth. I want to give myself closure. Whatever comes of it, good or bad. I want to see it with my own eyes. Hear it with my own ears. I support you. I'll take care of things at home. Go with peace of mind. No matter what happens, remember, this will always be your home, Coco, and I will always be here waiting for you." My heart warmed. I pulled her into my arms and held her tight. With a wife like this, what more could I ask for? The next morning, I booked a high-speed train ticket to that unfamiliar city. Before I left, I hugged Coco. "Daddy has to go on a business trip for a few days. Be good and listen to Mommy." "Okay, Daddy, come back soon." I picked up my simple suitcase and walked into the elevator. The doors closed slowly, cutting off her concerned gaze. I knew I was about to embark on an unknown journey, a journey to the origin of my life. Whether the road ahead would be smooth or treacherous, I didn't know. But I knew I had to go. This was my destiny. The high-speed train sped along the tracks. Outside the window, the scenery flew backward, cities, fields, mountains, rivers. Everything blurred, just like my buried past. I leaned back in my seat, eyes closed, but my mind was racing. I took out the small iron box from my backpack. I didn't open it, just ran my fingers gently over its cold surface. Inside this box were my roots, and also a lifetime of love, hate, and entanglement between two adults. I thought of my father, James, that silent man who hid all his deep feelings in action. In the past, I thought he was good to me because I was his only son, the hope of the Ryan family. Now I knew that goodness was also mixed with deep guilt toward me, and toward my birth mother Lily. She must have loved him very much. Otherwise, she wouldn't have risked destroying her family to have me. And he must have been very cowardly. Otherwise, he wouldn't have caved under Susan's threats and chosen to betray her. He was a man full of contradictions and tragedy, spending his whole life struggling in that contradiction and guilt, until death finally set him free. What about Lily? My birth mother, what kind of woman was she? The letter said she never married and had no children. Those 9 simple words hid how much unknown bitterness and suffering. Why didn't she remarry? Was it because she still loved my father? Or because she still carried a concern for me, her son? How had she lived all these years alone? Had she ever thought of coming to find me? Or was there some agreement between her and my father that I didn't know about? Countless questions swirled in my mind, tangled into a knot. I even started imagining what she looked like. Would she look like me? Or would I look like her? Would our eyes, noses, mouths, chins have any resemblance? This imagining brought a strange fear-tinged anticipation. I didn't know when the truth was finally revealed what my feelings would be. Relief, resentment, or pity. The train announcement for the next station interrupted my thoughts. I opened my eyes and looked out the window. Completely unfamiliar city appeared before me. Tall buildings, bustling traffic. This was the city my birth mother lived in. I had once existed under the same sky as her, yet I had known nothing about it. Fate truly was a mysterious and cruel thing. I got out of the station and hailed a taxi. Driver, to the hospice care center. I watched the unfamiliar streets outside the window, my heart a mix of emotions. Every blade of grass, every tree here might have met her eyes. She might have walked down these roads, seen these sights. Between us lay over 30 years of time, yet we were connected in this strange way. Half an hour later, the car stopped in a quiet suburb. Before me stood a white building surrounded by green trees. A sign hung at the entrance. Hospice Care Center. The word hospice felt bitterly ironic at that moment. There was no peace in my heart, only stormy waves. I paid the driver, got out, and stood at the entrance for a long time without moving. This was the end of my journey. On the other side of that door lay my birth mother, and the secrets of the first half of my life. All I had to do was push open that door, and everything would be revealed. But my feet felt like they were weighed down with lead too heavy to lift. I was scared. The closer you get to home, the more nervous you feel. That saying was true. I'm here to see a patient named Lily. Oh, you're here for Ms. Lily? You must be family. Yes. Please follow me. Ms. Lou, the social worker, contacted you, right? She was just saying you should be arriving about now. I nodded and followed the nurse. We walked down a long, quiet corridor. On both sides of the hallway were rooms housing souls at the very end of their lives. This was the last stop. No noise, no clamor, only endless stillness and a suffocating silence. The nurse stopped at an office door and knocked. Ms. Liu, Ms. Lily's family is here. Hello, I'm Lisa. You look so much like Ms. Lily. Let's talk inside. Mr. Ryan, thank you for coming. Ms. Lily, she doesn't have much time left. Seeing you is her only support now. How is she now? The cancer has spread throughout her body. She's mostly on medication, unconscious most of the time. She wakes up occasionally for short periods, but even when she's asleep, she keeps murmuring your name. How did she live all these years? Ms. Lily had a very hard life. She was young. I think she was a dancer in a cultural troupe. Very beautiful, very talented. Later, something happened. A big blow. And she quit. She never worked again after that, never married. She lived on her modest savings and odd jobs. She was very introverted, barely interacted with anyone, lived alone for most of her life. We only got involved after she became seriously ill and a neighbor brought her to the hospital. She was stubborn and proud. She never told us about her past. It wasn't until last month, when she knew she didn't have long, that she finally opened up and told us about you. I couldn't hold back my tears any longer. They poured out. I thought I was prepared. I thought I could face this calmly. But when those words came from a stranger's mouth, all my psychological defenses crumbled in an instant. So she hadn't stopped loving me, she just couldn't love me. Lisa didn't interrupt. She quietly handed me some tissues. When my emotions had settled a little, she said softly, Mr. Ryan, I know this is sudden and cruel for you. I don't know what happened between you, but I can feel that Ms. Lily's love for you is real. She's in room 307 on the 3rd floor. She just fell asleep. She might wake up in a little while. Would you like to go up and see her? I wiped my tears and nodded. There was no turning back now. I followed Lisa out of the office and into the elevator. The air inside the elevator seemed to freeze. I could hear my own heart pounding, each beat hammering against my eardrums. The elevator stopped on the 3rd floor. The corridor was even quieter and more oppressive than the 1st floor. Every door was closed. Behind each one, a soul fighting a battle with death. Lisa stopped in front of room 307. She pointed to the door. This is it. I won't go in. I'll leave you to some privacy. If you need anything, just press the call button. She nodded at me and walked away. I stood alone in front of room 307. On the door was a nameplate with 2 words. Lily. I had seen those characters on my birth certificate. I had read them in my father's letters. Now they were right in front of me. Behind that door was the woman who had given me life, yet had been absent for half of mine. I raised my hand, but hesitated to push the door open. My palms were drenched in sweat. What was I afraid of? Was I afraid of seeing a patient ravaged by disease? Or was I afraid of seeing a face that looked like mine, yet completely foreign? I didn't know. All I knew was that this door was heavier than any I had ever faced in my life. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. In my mind, I saw the smiling faces of Fiona and Coco. They were my strength, my anchor. I opened my eyes, my gaze firm. I reached out and gently pushed the door open. The room was dim. The curtains were drawn. A strong smell of medicine hung in the air. In the center of the room was a hospital bed, and lying on it was a small, withered figure. Tubes and wires ran from her body to machines that beeped steadily. Her hair was gone. Her face was covered in wrinkles, her skin sallow and bloodless. This was my mother? This was the once talented dancer? I could hardly believe my eyes. Time and illness had ravaged her beyond recognition. I walked slowly, step by step, to the bedside. I studied her face carefully. It was unfamiliar, yet somehow, in that unfamiliar face, I saw a hint of something familiar. Was it the straight bridge of her nose? Or the curve of her closed lips? I couldn't tell, but I knew it was a deep, wordless connection that came from blood. I stood quietly beside the bed. In my heart, there was no more hatred, no more anger, only endless sorrow and grief. Just then, her long eyelashes fluttered slightly. Then she slowly opened her eyes. What eyes they were! Cloudy, dim, full of weariness and pain. But when her gaze fell on me, those dim eyes suddenly burst forth with an incredible light. Shock, joy, guilt, and endless longing. We stared at each other. Time seemed to stand still. Her lips began to tremble. She tried to speak, but was too weak to make a sound. A single murky tear slipped from the corner of her eye and disappeared into her white hair. Then, a faint, barely audible, hoarse voice squeezed out of her cracked lips. Ryan. That word. My childhood nickname. The name only my father had ever called me. Susan never used it. She only ever called me Ryan. Or that thing. My body went rigid. An indescribable ache surged from the deepest part of my heart, flooding my limbs in an instant. I opened my mouth to speak, but my throat felt clogged with cotton. No sound came out. What should I call her? You've grown up. You look so much like him. The him was obviously my father, James. My heart was stabbed again. Why? I finally found my voice. Hoarse, dry, with a tremor I hadn't noticed. Why did you do this? Why give birth to me, and then not want me? Why push me to that woman? Why make me carry the burden of being a bastard for over 30 years? These questions had festered in my heart for too long. I needed an answer that would explain all the pain of my first half of life. Lily looked at me. In her cloudy eyes appeared a faint, sad smile. She seemed to gather every ounce of her remaining strength and began to speak, piece by piece, the story of that buried past. Your father and I truly loved each other. We met at the cultural troupe. I was a dancer, we were going to get married. Then what about Susan? Did she love him too? She didn't love him. She used a scheme. She got him drunk, and then she became pregnant with your oldest sister. Your father was an honest man. He felt responsible. So they got married. And me. After the marriage, your father wasn't happy. He would still come to see me secretly. We couldn't control ourselves. And then I had you. Those were the happiest days of my life. Even though it was all in secret, I could feel you growing in my belly day by day. I felt it was all worth it. But that happiness didn't last. Susan found out. She went crazy. She came to me with a pair of scissors. She said if I didn't leave your father, she would slash my face. She also said she would go to the cultural troupe and ruin me, make us both outcasts. In those days, that kind of scandal could destroy a person. I was scared. Your father was scared. We were both scared. But I was about to give birth. Where could I go? In the end, your father came up with a plan. He said I should have the baby, and he would take the child home to raise, telling everyone it was his and Susan's, and I had to disappear forever, never see either of you again. That was their agreement. A pact full of cowardice, yet carrying a helpless kind of love. Susan agreed. But she had one condition. She said she would raise you, but she would never let you have an easy life. She would make you live your whole life in her shadow. She would use you to torment your father, and to torment me. So that was it. The full truth. I wasn't abandoned. I was sacrificed. My existence became a bargaining chip. A chip to keep my birth mother away from the storm. A chip for my cowardly father to scrape by. A chip for that venomous woman to vent all her twisted hatred. All the pain, all the humiliation, all the injustice of my first half of life. It had been arranged from the moment I was born. I held her hand. The day she took you away, It was snowing heavily. I only held you for a moment. You were so small, so soft. I really couldn't bear to let you go. The biggest regret of my life is that I didn't take you with me that day. Even if it meant begging on the streets, it would have been better than leaving you with her. Her voice grew fainter and fainter. The machines beside the bed began to sound alarms. I knew she didn't have much time left. She used her last strength, her eyes fixed on me, her gaze full of pleading. Can you call me, just once? I knew what she wanted to hear. It was a word I had owed her for over 30 years, the only word she had held on so long to hear. I looked at her, this woman who had given me life, yet made me bear endless pain, looked at her fading eyes, full of hope. I couldn't hold back anymore. All those 30-plus years of grievance, resentment, heartache, longing, and this newly discovered love, as heavy as a mountain, they all poured into a single word. I leaned down close to her ear, and, with all my strength, clearly spoke. Mom. That word finally left my lips, not loud, but as if it had used every last bit of my energy, and as if it had lifted the heaviest stone from my heart. The woman on the bed shuddered at that sound. Her fading eyes suddenly blazed with an unbelievable light, which then softened into the most tender, relieved gentleness. The corner of her mouth painfully curved upward into the smallest of smiles, a smile I had been 30 years late in giving, yet one she had waited a lifetime for. Clear tears slipped from the corner of her eye, no longer murky, but bright and crystalline, as if washing away all the dust and pain of her life. She answered me, a sound so faint it was barely audible, yet it was etched into my soul forever. The alarms were still shrieking. Doctors and nurses rushed in and began emergency resuscitation, but I knew it was useless. Her wish had been fulfilled. The last strength that had kept her going was spent. I didn't move. I just held her hand tightly. I took out my phone and opened my photo gallery. I held the screen close to her eyes. On the screen were Fiona and Coco laughing in the sunlight. Mom, look, this is my wife Fiona, and this is my daughter Coco. She's 5 years old. She's your granddaughter too. I didn't know if she could still hear or see, but I had to tell her. I had to let her know that her son wasn't broken by all the pain. Her son had grown up, had a family of his own, and was happy. Her sacrifice was not in vain. I saw her gaze fall on the phone screen, on Coco's innocent smiling face. That tiny smile at the corner of her mouth seemed to widen just a little. Her lips moved silently. I leaned in closer and barely made out the words. That's good. That's really good. Don't worry. I'll live well. I'll take care of Fiona and Coco. I'll tell Coco that she has a grandmother who loved her very, very much. She just went to a faraway place, turned into a star in the sky, and watches over her. My tears fell drop by drop onto her hand. I felt the hand holding mine gradually lose its last strength. Beside me, the monitor that had been beeping steadily turned into one long flat tone. The doctors stopped their efforts and shook their heads helplessly. I'm sorry. We did everything we could. The room fell silent, save for that cold, mechanical long beep. I knew she was gone. She had left with my long overdue mom, with hope for my future life, peacefully gone. I didn't cry. I just held her cooling hand, my heart empty of hatred, empty of resentment, filled only with an unprecedented calm and a deep, bone-aching sorrow. I handled her final arrangements. It was simple, because she had no one else in this world except me. Among her belongings, I found a small wooden box. Inside, there were no valuables, only a pair of tiny hand-sewn tiger head shoes. The shoes were old but well preserved. On the soles, embroidered in red thread, were two small words, Ryan. At the very bottom of the box was a faded black and white photo of a young girl in a dancer's costume, smiling like a flower. Her eyes and brows resembled mine by 7 parts. On the back of the photo was a line of delicate handwriting. May my son have a lifetime of peace and joy. The date was the day I was born. Holding those little shoes and that photo, my tears broke through again. So for all those 30-odd years I never knew, she had been loving me all along, never absent. I chose a cemetery plot for her on a quiet hillside that faced the sunrise. At the funeral, I was the only one there. I placed that small iron box containing her life secrets, along with my father's letters and those little shoes, into her urn. Dad, Mom, I don't know if you'll meet again in the next world, but if you do, I hope you can let go of all your guilt and cowardice and start over fresh. As for Susan, as for those 3 sisters, They no longer mattered. The moment my birth mother Lily closed her eyes, all the grievances of my first half of life vanished like smoke. I stood in front of the grave for a very long time, until the setting sun stretched my shadow far, far behind me. I bowed deeply to the headstone, then turned and walked down the mountain. I didn't look back, because I knew my future wasn't in the past. It was down there, where Fiona and Coco were waiting. That was my true home. I returned home. The moment I pushed open the door, the aroma of food hit me. Coco flew like a little swallow from the living room and threw herself into my arms. "Daddy, you're back. I missed you so much." "Daddy missed you too." I held her soft little body, smelled the faint milky scent in her hair, and in that instant, my long wandering heart finally found its resting place. Fiona came out of the kitchen, still wearing her apron. She didn't ask me anything, just looked at me with a gentle smile. "Welcome back. Go wash your hands. Dinner's almost ready." That meal, I ate with extra relish, as if making up for all the simple joys I had missed during those days away. That night, after Coco fell asleep, Fiona and I sat on the balcony, looking out at the myriad lights of the city. I told her everything about my trip, from Lily's story to the little shoes, to the final farewell. I spoke calmly, without too much emotional fluctuation, as if telling someone else's story. Fiona listened quietly. When I finished, she reached out and gently took my hand. "It's all in the past." Yes, it's all in the past. We smiled at each other, and everything was understood. From that day on, I never voluntarily mentioned those past events again. What became of Susan's case later? I never asked where my 3 sisters went, how they were doing. I stopped caring. They, along with that whole Ryan family filled with pain and shame, were forever sealed away in the deepest vault of my memory. I had Lily's black and white photo developed into a color print, and placed it side by side with our family portrait on my study bookshelf. I didn't tell Coco too complicated a story. I just pointed to the photo and said, "Coco, look, this is your grandmother. She was a very beautiful dancer. She lives with the stars in the sky now, and she watches over you every night." Coco nodded thoughtfully, then sweetly said, "Hello, Grandma."